Today we're just going to be doing a short video on how to use the backsplash jig. For the demonstration, we're going to be using the Voyager that we have here at Park Industries. The process for our water jet CNC saws will be relatively the same. We'll go over the differences as we get to those points further throughout this video. We got our backsplash jig on the Voyager. It doesn't matter if you have the newer stops or the flip-up pin stops, but what you're going to do is you're just basically going to pull your backsplash jig into your stops. Going to take the gravity out of those stops, make sure it's fully against the stop. Then you're going to grab your C-clamps, and we're going to start by just clamping one side only, because there is play in these stops. Unlike our saw jets, so with our saw jets, you would have the doweling locations where you could use that repeatability. On the Sabre, non-Sabre jet, and the Voyagers, with these types of stops, we actually need to just run a quick little demonstration on how to align the backsplash. I'm going to start by clamping just one side here. I'm going to have a C-clamp ready for that side, but I'm not going to place it on the other side just yet. And we're going to do a quick little showdown of how we're going to scribe on the backsplash so you can see how we're going to align the blade. So we're just going to go over two different ways on how to mark out a piece of backsplash to align the blade to it. On one side here, we just have some white out. We've got some tape on this side. This side is my polished face, so this is going to be the dimension that I'm coming from. For today's video, what we're doing is we're taking this piece of 3 cm down to 2 cm. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open up my caliper here to 2 cm mark, about, roughly, give or take. And I'm just using these to show basically, you know, if I go and put this like this and I lock it in with the top of the caliper here so that this can't move. Just by dragging this across, doesn't matter which way you do it, you're just gonna get a nice visible line either on that tape or on the backsplash. This is the other end. We've just flipped it around, so now this is my polished face, so just always be paying attention to which side you're referencing from. And then again, I'm going to make the same mark on this side as well. So with our end scribe now, we're just going to make sure that as we grab this piece, this backsplash, so just for video purposes, this is my polished face. What I'm going to do is I'm always going to locate my polished face. If you look inside of here, you can actually see there's this little rubber strip. Now sometimes the rubber strips will peel off or fade off or whatever, and if that's the case, you're going to want the rough face of your backsplash always against that spot, because on these little screws there's plastic that will not damage your polished face. If you have the rubber and it's nice and clean, you know, free of dust, so you're not creating scratches on your backsplash, what we would do is we're going to take this, so backsplash in this case is going to go against the back here. Just putting that in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one clamp. I'm going to make sure that it's, you know, staying down into the bottom of the jig as I go and firmly and securely clamp this. And I'm just holding this in place, making sure that, you know, I'm letting it flip to 90 if it's a little bit off or whatever. Just going to secure that. And then what we're going to do is, once this is fully secured, you know, in a way that I'm comfortable with it not moving on me when I'm trying to cut, is now we're going to go and start the program to get that blade to come over to 0, 0 if you're using a program. If you're not going to use a program and you're going to use the orthogonal feature that are on some of our saws, then you can ignore this next step and basically just get your blade in line, and we'll cover that as well when we get there. Now for certain scenarios, maybe we had located the backsplash jig further to the operator side of the machine. Most people tend to have their tool change position more towards the right side of the table over here. But if the backsplash jig was set up over here, that could potentially cause an issue with the blade coming forward and wanting to do a tool change right on top of the backsplash and its pieces. So I'm going to just run through just on the Voyager here and the screens of the other machines where you would go to actually change that tool change location in case it was going to give you some sort of issue, whether it would be just where it comes out for location or for clearance and height. So on the screen here on the Voyager, we're going to go to setup, and just here in the normal setup area, this is where you can capture a tool change location. So to show you how I could do this, I'm just going to actually hit cycle start here on the normal program. I'm going to have it come forward to the tool change location. I'm going to stop the program, and then I'm going to show you how we can change that location. Here the machine is coming into the tool change location. Notice how a lot of people typically have the Z-axis lower itself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit cycle stop. And then in order to change that tool change location, let's just say for a moment I just wanted the head or the saw of the machine to be further back on the table, somewhere where I know I'm not going to have issues. Or maybe I'm going to move it all the way to the left side of the table. Either way, the process is going to be the same. I'm just simply going to, on my toggle switch down here, I'm going to move the machine further back in Y. So if you can see that on camera, it's moved quite a bit further back. All right. And maybe just as an added benefit, I'm also going to raise the Z up for the tool change location, because I'm worried about when it comes down a little bit, I don't want it to run into the backsplash or backsplash jig. At this point, once we have that location that we physically can see, like that's a good spot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my screen. I'm going to just make sure that my Z-axis is not fully, down a little bit off of the bridge location. I'm going to come back to setup, and right here on the Voyager, I'm going to hit capture position. And that's going to change right up here. Those values just changed on the screen there, and that's now where my new tool change location is. So with that being explained, this time when I hit cycle go, we're going to actually allow the machine to get into position at 00 here. So I am going to hit cycle start. Like I said, it's going to always come up on the Voyager. It's going to come to the tool change location here. At this point, I'm going to hit cycle go again. It's going to lift up. It's going to turn on. Now I have this programmed so that it is going to go plenty high above the backsplash in this instance. The beginning of the cut is actually located at the end of the table. And it's going to come down to the desired height. It is not going to be in the right spots because it's programmed off of 00. What we're going to do is once this starts feeding here, I'm actually going to hit cycle stop. Now this location is going to be a little bit different on every saw, but what I'm going to do is on the screen of the saw, on this particular one, on the Voyager here, I'm going to go to operate manual. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to user this out so that for myself, I have a captured location. This is important because as I start going and moving the saw around, I want to know how much I have to shift the blade and why to get further back on the machine to get in line with that scribe mark that we had just made a little bit ago. So remember that in the beginning I said that this side was my polished face. So if this is the distance I want, I need my blade on this side of the line. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slowly basically just start coming towards us on the camera here. All right, I'm gonna start coming down a little bit. I'm relatively getting close in the right area here. And what I'm looking for is at this point, I'm just kind of holding the slow button. I'm not doing anything fast. Is kind of from the perspective of how we have the camera aligned, either the front or the back of the blade, you need to be able to get in there. So what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to get this side of the diamonds in line with the correct side of the etch mark. So for the purpose of the video here, I'm just gonna kind of get my face down in here behind the blade a little bit. Yeah. But more or less, come a little closer down into the material. All right, so off camera here for a little bit, I did readjust my position of my blade here just a little bit because I couldn't see quite as well from the back. So I just put my face around the front and got lined up for you. But what we're gonna do next is this only guarantees us that this end is in line, right? The backsplash on the Voyager, without those dowels like the water jet, there is some play in these stops down here. So because of the play in these stops, I don't know if I'm gonna be perfectly in line all the way along the front edge of the table. So I'm actually gonna drive the blade forward and I'm gonna make sure that it's in line here. If it is in line, I'm gonna clamp it down. If I need to use a small hammer, like a dead blow or something, to just kind of tap it one way or the other to get it in line, I'm gonna do that and then clamp it down. And then I'm gonna go back and have to double check just to make sure that I didn't influence the beginning side. So I do have to come forward a little bit on this. So I'm actually gonna have to take this stop out. And then I'm gonna pull it in line and then I'm gonna clamp it. And this is actually with just that one pivot point back there, this is actually going pretty well for me just using my hand strength to just kind of pull it in line here. All right. Just gonna clamp this side now that that side's in line before I go back to the beginning to make sure that the other side didn't move. And we are still in line. If marking your blade, marking your backsplash and aligning your blade to those marks is not quite accurate enough for you, you did also receive a dial indicator with the machine with a mag base on it. You can of course go ahead and either indicate your face polish in or your backsplash jig itself using the indicators. That would let you know to the thousandths how accurate you are actually having your alignment to that blade. With that alignment done, being in line and knowing exactly how far back, the machine has captured a position for me. So right down here, if you look at my Y value, 4.710, all right? That can be used right now as it sits. If I would like to use that Going back to my operation auto screen, what I can do is I can use our program shift feature to shift the, so I don't need anything in my X. So I'm gonna actually switch that back to 0 here real quick. But in my Y, if I would wish, I can do that. I wish to shift my program from the 0 point that we had established 4.710 inches back in a positive direction towards the back of the table. And on the Voyager, when I hit the set button, you'll know up top here above where the program is typically showing on the screen, you'll see program shift enabled. So that's just going to move the program that we had made a little earlier to go and shift it back that set amount for the backsplash. With everything ready, now we're going to hit cycle go, and we're going to let it run all the way through on the first side. Remember, it's only cutting halfway through, so after it's done, we're going to have to flip it back over and just run the same program again on the second side. At this point, I'm just going to flip it back over to cut the other half. But remember, it is going to be extremely important that you remember what side your polished face was actually against that rubber, so that way when you flip it over, you keep the same side against there. Don't rotate this way. And again, securely clamp. And here we are hitting cycle go again. Same thing as before. On the Voyager, comes forward to the tool change location first. Same program, no changes. All right, so we're done cutting this here. In our example, we made a program that went all the way through. Basically, it could be used for much longer pieces than what we're doing here today. But one thing to note is if you do allow the blade, if we take a peek at the piece that is on the table here, if you allow the blade to keep traveling past the end of the backsplash, I'm just going to kind of squish this together here a little bit so you can kind of see right here in the corner that once the blade goes through, if this heavier piece starts to fall back, the piece that we're wanting to keep starts to fall back on the blade, and you allow the blade to keep going, you could end up with a little bit of a grind out on that corner. So one thing that you can do is make sure that your second cut or your last cut on the backsplash is on the rough, unpolished side of the stone, so basically it would be hidden. But if this is an exposed backsplash on the outside of a countertop where you're gonna see that regardless, that little bit of grind away, basically by making sure that you stop the blade while it's still in the material, you don't just hit cycle stop or quit using orthogonal, however which way you're doing it, stop, shut it down, you know, come out of the stone and basically quit traveling at that point. Then the piece will never be able to fall back and rub against those diamonds on the blade. Thank you for choosing Park Industries.